When something goes wrong, when they take a foul, even if the referee blew it and the referee made a bad call, everybody in the stands, everybody knows he made a bad call, and your player loses his mind. Is that physical or is that mindset?
That's mental for sure.
Does that affect the rest of the team?
100%.
Does it affect the coach?
Yes, and the coach can do the same thing and affect his athletes or her athletes.
And then does it also give the competitive team on the other side an upper hand on you now?
They do have an advantage. We talk about that all the time on offense.
That's all mental. That's all mental. If you can control the mental side of the game, you can control the physical output. You can literally control the physical output by understanding the mental, emotional, spiritual, and relational side of the sport.
You are listening to the Beyond the Scoreboard podcast, transforming athletes into leaders on and off the court with host Coach Furtado. Coaches, are you ready to take your passion for coaching and turn it into a full-time career? I know the challenges firsthand, but the Make Money Coaching Sports program helped me take BTG basketball full-time. If you're tired of juggling coaching part-time and want to fully focus on doing what you love, this business accelerator will give you the tools and support to make it happen. Hit the link in the show notes below to learn more and start living your dream.
Thanks for having me here.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Beyond the Scoreboard podcast. Today, I have with us Gordon Macfarlane, a performance mindset coach. Gordon helps everyone communicate, few connect. So he's performance mindset training assists leaders and coaches with the ongoing challenge of communicating with influence while unlocking and unleashing the power of positive, limitless growth mindset. Welcome to the show, Gordon.
Thanks, Justin. Great to be here. Thank you.
So let's dive right in. I want to talk about how you view coaching beyond the scoreboard.
Great question, one that's near and dear to my heart. Being a coach for as many years as I've been, for over 40 years in the sport of ice hockey here in Canada, but we want to make sure that we're bringing in our best athletes. Of course, my first 20 years of coaching was really just what I learned as a player. I played to a semi-pro level where I was a player coach for 1 year only, but it was a good enough experience for me to play at a high level, an elite level, and but also to understand the coaching part of it. And my coaching career just kind of took off from there. And what I realized in the first basically 15 to 20 years of my coaching career, that finding the best athletes was the biggest challenge, right? Obviously, we're looking for skill and ability to be able to play the sport. Very important. But as I started to realize coaching these athletes, we'd win some championships and it would be like an up and down, like a toilet seat, right? You'd win a championship and then you couldn't put it together the next season. You know, man, what did we do last year that was so effective? And I realized that, when you look at coaching from a skill and ability perspective, you have a series of athletes. We call this the 10-80-10 rule, where you have 80% of your athletes are going to be good enough to be on your team. You'll have 10% that are your superstars, the people that are really going to be game changers for you. When pressure's on, you go to that top 10%. You put them on the hardwood, or you put them on the ice, or you put them on the field, and you go to those guys. Those are your go-to players. I'm sure you've experienced that, Justin, in your coaching, is that you have those go-to guys, right? And then there's the 10%, which was kind of where I was. I was one of those 10%. Gee, I wonder if I'm going to play today. I wonder if I'm going to get cut. I'm good enough to be there. I've got enough skill to be there, but I'm kind of like I'm the last call, right? I'm the last call up. But just the fact that I was able to be there. So we have those 10%. So that's the 10-80-10. So what I realized that, when I met this gentleman by the name of Lloyd Switzer, his nickname was Butch. He said, well, Gord, we want to really understand our athletes from a people perspective. And I started to get trained in that area. So I started getting training in understanding personalities, which I'd had some experience with before in leadership training. From 1991 onward, I was working in a lot of leadership training groups in corporate. And then I just automatically applied that into my coaching career, because I wasn't a full-time professional coach at the time. So I was working my day job as a professional sales rep. And I was a sales trainer, but also a leadership trainer. So I was taking all the skills I was learning in leadership and sales and trying to apply it to the game of hockey. And what I found was that when you learn about an athlete from a people perspective, find out who they are. Like, what do they like? What do they not like? You can really start to reach them and you build trust with them, right? So we wanted to build trust with our people so we could then teach them the game of hockey, and it could be any sport that you want to relate to. So when we started doing that, oh my gosh, Justin, the changes in our athletes was remarkable. The response in the rapport we were able to build with these young athletes was incredible. In the 11 years I coached with this gentleman, Lloyd Butch, we won 8 championships in 11 years, 5 in a row. Like we won 5 championships consecutively, but then the remaining years we won another 3 championships. It was just incredible. And so I carried that into my university coaching career and my semi-pro coaching career and my junior career. And I developed a program called Performance Mindset. It was started in 2001 when I got certified as a human behavior specialist. And well, first as a consultant and then a specialist, but then I thought, man, this would be really cool to kind of set up a systemic process by which we know how to select our athletes, not just according to skill, but according to their character, their attitude, their behavior. Do they have the right mindset? Or am I going to have to work on that mindset to create a warrior type attitude? So I have a graphic in my current book, and it looks like this. For those that can't see it, it goes from, step 1 to step 4. You have all this assorted people that are involved in the program. Then you want to kind of narrow it down from a skill and a skill perspective, but then you want to narrow it down further from a character perspective, right? There are certain athletes that I can teach to be tough, and certain athletes that are naturally tough, right? You know that they're going to get knocked down, and they're just going to jump back up. They're going to get knocked down 7 times, they'll get back up 8. And then there's the other athlete that gets knocked down once, and you have to kind of help them up, pat him on the head, pat him on the butt, and kind of say, hey, you're okay. You're not hurt, right? Let's get back in there. And they go, well, I don't know. That one really hurt. That's okay. But we want to find the guys that will get up on their own. Because if I don't have to teach that, I can concentrate on teaching my sport. So we created a process. So we wanted to build athletes. We also wanted to build a culture. And then we wanted to deliver that and teach leadership. Teach leadership to guys and gals that basically knew naturally how to become leaders and solidify their leadership influence with a process. So it's like a 3-step process. So coaching for me was, instead of just looking at skill and ability, to look at character and develop the young athlete to become that warrior that we're hoping that they would become. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, there's a ton of wisdom. So I want to dive kind of right into it so we can maximize our time for the coaches that are listening in this process. And you're talking about, we talked about it a little bit before. We talked about how 20% is technical, but 80% is that mindset that you're talking about, especially in youth sports, right? And we're really talking about youth sports and developing that character for if they get to play collegiately or professionally, and even more importantly for life. So let's break it down. How do we develop this leadership into them? Like what's that process look like for you?
That's another really good question. So when you're thinking about youth sports, when I talk about kids that are in their developmental stages in the teen years, and as we head into the later teen years, I would probably say that you're going to spend a lot more time on developing skill and ability, obviously, right, with your younger athletes. As you get to the 17, 18, 19, 20-year-olds, you're going to be working less and less on skill and ability. That's going to be up to them to develop the skills and tricks of the trade that they need to learn, right? But as you get to the older ages, now it's important to kind of say, hey, who are my leaders? Who are the people that are going to step up and become those influencers? My new book that I'm going to be finishing up here in the next few weeks is called Performance Influencer. Are you a performance influencer? Or are you just a player? Are you able to influence performance through extending your leadership into? We always get asked this question, Justin. What kind of a leader are you? Right? Are you and people say, well, I'm a lead by example leader. Well, I said, welcome to the bottom rung of the ladder, because that's the first rung of the ladder, is to lead by example, right? So in terms of being able to develop athletes, for me, when I teach young athletes to say, okay, we're going to work on your skill, but I really want to help you develop your character. So what we use is personality profiles. We use personality profiles to help identify who is this person we're talking to? Are they outgoing or are they reserved? And we use the DISC model of human behavior. The DISC model of human behavior is where I'm certified in, and I'll show you kind of a visual of it. The DISC model of human behavior is D, I, S, and C, right? So there's the D personality, the I personality, the S and the C personality. The D's are direct, the I's are influencers, the S's are supportive, and the C's are cautious. Now, the cool thing about this is that we have all 4 of these temperaments within us. some to a greater, some to a lesser degree. So when you identify, it's a self-assessment, 24 simple questions, takes about 15, 20 minutes to do. And when you get this report, it tells us everything we need to know about this athlete from an attitude and behavior perspective, which is really cool. Because now, and when you meet a person, Justin, what do you notice first about them? Do you notice their personality? No, you don't. What you notice is their attitude and behavior. When you notice their attitude and behavior, that directs you towards a character. Once you know their character, the character illuminates the potential for what their personality is. Does that make sense?
Yes, let's really break that down.
So when we get to their personality, now I know within a personality there are certain tendencies. For a D personality, so if you look at the D personality, you'll see different words. They're direct, determined, and competitive. If they're an I personality, they're an influencer, aspiring, and high energy. If they're an S personality, they're supportive, friendly, and relational. And if they're a C personality, they're more cautious, strategic, and analytic, right? Analytical. Now, I am very low in the C quadrant. I'm very high in the DI quadrant, all right? So when we do a personality profile, right? When you get a personality profile, there are two graphs that get shown to us. There's the basic graph, this is mine. So I'm a DI. So you can see I'm 100% D, 100% I. See that? I'm 63%, 65%, I'm reading it backwards here, 65% S and only 3% C. This is my natural personality. When I'm in my environment, my environmental personality changes to all D. I'm all outgoing and I'm like, I'm going to smack you in the mouth to win. I'll do whatever it takes to win, right? So that's my personality. Now, we talk about if you're going to be an aggressive or an assertive player, it's like a shark swimming in the water, right? And I always tell, like, our goal is to become a shark. There are only two types of fish in the ocean. There are sharks and shark bait. So when we understand that if you're a shark, you're always on the hunt. Now, in athletics, the goal is to be on the hunt to become the better version of yourself, growth mindset, seeking excellence, the better version of yourself. But we've got to give our athletes tools. We've got to give them tools to help them understand how to develop that. So when you learn the DISC model of human behavior with our program, D, I, S, and C, from your report, that report's going to give you your identity from a personality perspective. I have a certain understanding what we call a predictive index. In behavior, we talk about predictive index. What can I predict Justin is going to be if he's a DI? Well, he's outgoing. If he's a CS, a CNS, he's reserved. So I know those two things right away. I know you're either outgoing or you're reserved. That's very helpful. If I want to have a team that's a high energy team, I'm probably going to lean towards an outgoing personality style for most of my selections. Does that make sense? If I want a high energy team, I want to go for someone who's outgoing. If I want to have someone who's a little more strategic and more thoughtful, like maybe in tennis or in golf, I'm looking for someone who's more strategic and reserved, right? That they can think the game, right? They can think they're strategic, like golfers and tennis players are more aligned to a CSSC type personality. But if you're playing a strong, hard, aggressive sport like basketball or hockey or football or rugby or lacrosse, then you're going to want to have someone that's going to naturally lean towards an outgoing personality and a task orientation, right? If I have to teach that to people, that's going to make my process as coaching a lot harder. So just to give you an idea how I learned this, my mentor, Dr. Robert Rome, fantastic. I would say he's probably the world's expert on human behavior when it comes to applying it to business and sports and even family. When I first got certified with his company, Personality Insights, I noticed that he was wearing a ring. And I said, because I'm an athlete, right? I'm going like, what's that big honking ring you got on your face? And he says, it's a World Series ring. I said, you played Major League Baseball? He goes, no. I said, how did you get a World Series ring? He said, well, I'm like, you're training to be a behaviorist. I'm a behaviorist. And so I help organizations understand their athletes and their employees so they can perform better. I said, okay, whoa. I said, you got to teach me how to do that. He says, yeah, I was hired by the Arizona Diamondbacks in 1996. And what we did was we applied the DISC model of human behavior to their recruitment. I'm going, fascinating. That's really cool. So Dan Mitchell, who was the head scout for the Atlanta Braves, used the same principle from Dr. Rome and won a World Series with Atlanta. So when he got hired by Arizona, he said, we got to bring this guy, Dr. Robert Rome, in. And that's what they did. And he said, okay, we're going to get 600 athletes, all really good ball players, and we're going to choose them, yes, on skill and ability. But he said, Dan, what are you looking for? He says, I want all Ds. I want all Ds. And Dr. Rome said, are you sure? He says, yep, I want all Ds. He says, why do you want all Ds? And now I get into really good arguments and discussions with baseball players. He says, baseball is played by a team, but it's not a team sport. And I'm going, interesting. He says, it's really played, every out in baseball is only with two people. Pitcher, catcher, second base, first base, hitter, outfielder. It's two people. Everybody has to own their position. The best person for ownership is the D, is to take ownership. What do we want our athletes to do? In basketball, like you, Justin, in hockey, like me, I want my athletes to take ownership. So if someone has a natural ability in their persona, in their personality, in their temperament to take ownership, I really want to select a D because I don't have to teach that to them. They do it naturally. Make sense? So I don't have to break down. And that, by the way, it doesn't mean that these other personalities cannot play in a D environment. I teach my athletes that I work one-on-one and as a team, I said, you need to learn to ask yourself a question. What's required of me now? When you know your personality, D, I, S, or C, you know the ideal environment for each personality. Here's the other thing. There's an ideal environment, right? An ideal environment where these are the basic needs for the 4 different temperaments. So when you know the ideal environment, by knowing basic needs, you can create ideal environments. I'm going like this is rich. I'm going to write a book on this, which I did. I wrote my first book, Become a Person of Influence, which was a international bestseller, right? I spoke on 4 different continents on this subject, on how to create an environment where people feel, celebrated, not tolerated. That makes sense? You follow me so far? Everything good?
Yes. Everything makes sense.
All right, so let's go back to our Diamondback story, Arizona Diamondbacks. So Dr. Rome gets hired by the Arizona Diamondbacks. They get 600 athletes, and here's what they ended up with. You want to see their circle chart? This is what they ended up with. That's their team. And Dr. Rome said, naturally speaking, that would be like herding cats.
Right.
How do you sit 25, 30 cats on a couch? You just don't do it. I sounded Canadian there, didn't I? How do you get 25 cats on a sofa or a Chesterfield or a couch, whatever you want to call it? You don't, unless you create the right environment for them to want to be there. You have to create the right environment for people to want to be there. And so I took Dr. Rome out for dinner. I asked him, I said, will you have dinner with me? Will you explain the process on how to do that? On how you transform this team of Ds into a team that would go on to win the World Series. Because he told him, he said, you're going to win the World Series in the next 3 to 5 years. And when you do, I want a World Series ring. And by golly, when they won the World Series, they sent him a ring. And on the side of the ring, Justin, it says, fastest World Series ever in the history of Major League Baseball. Now, here's something I want to tell you. No one in Major League Baseball has ever contacted Dr. Robert Rome and asked him how he did that. Is that incredible when you think about it? Fastest World Series in the history of Major League Baseball. And he was the reason. And Dan Mitchell will tell you he was the reason because he brought him to Arizona. Now, Dr. Rome taught me that whole series over a 2-3 hour dinner. And he's won 1 World Series. I've won many. I've won all kinds of championships using the same principles that Dr. Rome used with the Arizona Diamondbacks. And the ones that I'm really proud of are the 2 national championships I won with a hockey program. And not too many people can tell you that they have Notre Dame rings. I have 2 Big Ten championships with Notre Dame using the same. And I don't say that to impress you. I say that to impress upon you that the system that I'm explaining to you actually works. It actually works where you find the right people, right? So let's go back to that graphic that I showed you, okay? You start with a whole series of players, right? You narrow it down to skill and ability, and then you filter them for character traits that are conducive to the ideal environment that you're building. And congratulations, you have yourself now a team of warriors where now you can teach the sport of basketball or hockey or lacrosse or whatever sport you want. Once you've got them tuned in to understanding what's required of them, and if it's not natural, then they're going to have to become that D for 60 minutes. When I go to school, Guess what I have to be? I can't be a D in school. I've got to be more of a C. I've only got 3%. So I had to change my what? I had to change my mindset. So you have to teach these young athletes how to change their mindset to adapt to the current environment. And these are life skills. These are life skills that they're learning in the sport of basketball. These are life skills that they're learning in the sport of baseball, basketball, soccer, hockey, right? And they're applicable when they become parents, raising their kids in the first 7 years, in the first seven formative years of their life. How to be successful connecting with mainstream culture, with mainstream society. The problem is that a lot of kids these days don't know how to interact. They don't know how to communicate to connect. That's why I wrote the book, right? They don't know how to communicate to connect because their parents were disconnected, right? The Gen Z, Gen X generation, it's all about me, 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 me. I say, look, help enough other people get what they want and you'll get what you want. So in sports, Justin, the program of performance mindset is to really help people understand who they are, what they do, how they do it, and why. And then how do they fit into a team scenario by giving them reasons to be celebrated, right, in that environment? Because when people are celebrated, they always perform better. That all makes sense? I know I shared a lot of information there.
There's a ton of wisdom there. And my main question, right? How can I continue to teach that? Because like we talked about a little bit before we started recording, I'm coaching a team and I am working on teaching them to be sharks, as you're talking about. I don't think it comes naturally to them. I have like
No.
1 or 2 players who are sharks, but the rest of the team is learning that. And so that's what I'm spending a lot of my time doing. So, I'm sure some of the coaches that are listening are probably nodding their head like, yes, how do we teach our players to become sharks?
Yeah, and that's that whole process of visiting, right? And now you want to look at the percentages of the population. When you look at, and I've spoken in Asia, Europe, all over North America, Canada, the United States, in hundreds of different conferences. And I say, okay, when you're going to learn in personalities, you have to understand that when it comes to personalities, only 10% of the population are D. I think I call it God's tithing because if there are more than 10%, there'd probably be a lot of dead bodies around. And I'll tell you, in the first 20 years of my coaching career, Justin, there was a lot of dead bodies in my wake. I was a legend in my own mind. And basically I thought I knew it all. Right. And so I got some very good wisdom and information passed on to me by Lloyd Switzer. I owe a ton of credit. I give him a ton of credit. He's since passed on. But he was about 15 years my senior, but we were just great friends. And he taught me so much about understanding people. And Dr. Rome is currently still my mentor. I've learned so much from him as well. But only 10% of the population is D. So that tells you that we've got a lot of work to do if we want our athletes to be D, right? 30% are I's, 35% are S's, and 25% are C's. And I'm a D personality. I'm a DI personality. Here's what Dr. Rome told us now. He wasn't speaking to me personally. I took it personally. He says, here's what you Ds need to understand, right? You make up 10% of the population, which means 90% of the people don't understand you and probably don't like you. Because I'm a DI and I'm a people person, right? I like people, right? I like to be around people. That kind of hurt my feelings, right? I want to be an athlete. I want to be out there. I want to be a leader. I want to go. I've got high energy, which you notice I probably have a little bit of energy.
Just a little.
So I'm a little over the top in that way. What I needed to learn was to settle down a little bit, focus my energy, and make sure that I wasn't eating people's faces off for the sake of my own gain, right? We want to be competitive, but we want to be humble in victory. We want to be respectful. We want to be hard to play against, but again, respectful. We don't want to be jerks. A lot of Ds can be jerks, right? And I think of the sport of basketball, and you think of MJ, I feel is one of the classiest, one of the best examples of the greatest of all time basketball players ever to live. And I mean, you have other players that say that they are, but when you have to say that you are, you're probably not, right? So you let your example speak for itself. And so your attitude and behavior. And now, one of the really good books that you may want to get your athletes to read is The Hard Hat by John Gordon. And it's I don't know if you've ever seen it or read it, but it's a really good book, and it's a book on character. And for me, that's the real pinnacle of what we're trying to teach our athletes is to become responsible athletes, become responsible people, because whatever we learn in our sport translates to living. It translates to life. When my wife and I we're both behavior specialists, we work with families and we say, hey, don't be afraid to create a culture for your family. What are the expectations of your family, right? Your family is to be kind and considerate to other people. Yes, go for broke. Be the best version of whatever it is you want to be. I'm not going to tell my kids who they should be. I want them to be the best version of themselves. So I'm going to equip them with all the tools that they need to be that best version. And that's what we should be doing as coaches. Skill is one thing. We love teaching the skill of our sport, right? How to shoot, how to score, how to rebound, whatever it is you teach, right? Obviously being physically fit. Those are all things that are really important. But I want my athletes to walk away from my program being a better version of themselves. And the parents are saying, I don't know what you did with my kid, but I love who he's becoming as a young man, or I love who she's becoming as a young woman. And there are dynamics between men and women. There are two genders, right? Men and women. There aren't 300 and whatever silly genders there are. There are men and women, but they're wired differently. And we have to be aware of that. Behaviors, and there's no gender differential in personality. You have to be very clear on that. There's no gender differential in personality. You're a D woman or you're a D man, same principles, same characteristics. If you're an I woman, same principles, same characteristics. What happens is our nurture. How are we raised? What are the thoughts and attitudes and behaviors that we're raised with? That's what you and I as coaches have to contend with. When we're getting these different athletes coming from all these different places, right? So I say, look, you all came here in different ships, but guess what? On this team, we're all in the same boat. We need to learn to row together, right? We come from all these different locations, different cultures. Some are Muslim, some are Christian, some are this, some are that, right? We come from all these different areas. We've all got the same love for basketball. We all got the same love for hockey or lacrosse or baseball, whatever sport we're playing. But we came in these different ships, but now we're here. We're in the same boat. We need to learn to row together, because if you're rowing in different directions, your boat's going in circles, right? And you have no ability to move to the objective that you have for your team. So culture, attitude, and behavior and character are quintessential development pieces and I find that too many coaches are spending way too much time on skill and ability, and they're not giving time. So let me ask you a question, Justin, connected to that. What percentage of the game of basketball is physical versus mental? Is it 50-50, 60-40, 80-20, 90-10? What is it? What do you think it is as a coach?
As a coach, I feel like it varies on the age group, but I would say anywhere between like a 40 to 60% split.
Okay. So all the other coaches that are probably nodding their head and saying, yeah, okay. Some may say 70-30, or, some may say 80-20, right? The actual number is 85-15. The numbers that have been researched and done over and over, in corporate, it's 80-20, but in athletics, it's averaged out to 85-15. And this goes all the way back to the early 1900s. With the School of Engineers, and I can share with you the document at another time, but it was actually shown there that engineers, all right, needed to spend way more time developing their teams, their people, than they were building bridges, infrastructure, and roads. It was 85. They needed to be 85% on people and 15% on skill and ability. So when you think about that, even if let's go 60-40. Okay, let's go 60-40. Think about your practice regime and think about your game now. How much time do you spend? 60% of your time developing the mental side of your athletes.
Probably wouldn't be 60%, no. It's more than most coaches, but it was not 60%.
And would you say across the board, most coaches would spend less than 10% on developing the mindset, the attitude and behavior of their... That's my point. So if I ask the coaches, even if they say 50-50, are you literally taking 50% of your time in developing the mindset, the attitude, the behavior, and shaping the character of your players? When something goes wrong, when they take a foul, even if the referee blew it and the referee made a bad call, everybody in the stands, everybody knows he made a bad call, and your player loses his mind. Is that physical or is that mindset?
That's mental for sure.
Does that affect the rest of the team?
100%.
Does it affect the coach?
Yes, and the coach can do the same thing and affect his athletes or her athletes.
Exactly. And then does it also give the competitive team on the other side an upper hand on you now?
They do have an advantage. We talk about that all the time on offense.
That's all mental. That's all mental. If you can control the mental side of the game, you can control the physical output. You can literally control the physical output by understanding the mental, emotional, spiritual, and relational side of the sport. So when it comes to human behavior, all right, let's look at this very clearly. When you talk about human behavior, right, I'm going to give you some direction here. So D's and I's are outgoing. C's and S's are reserved. I's and S's are people-oriented. They love to be around people. D's and C's are task. So I talk about the 5 elements of human behavior. I teach this to my coaches and my athletes and my business owners as we create cultures for our organization. You have to remember this. The physical part is easy, right? I say, look, make sure that you're working on making your practices way harder than any game will ever be. Like, you want to have your practices hard as nails, because when they get to the game, now they can start having fun and doing what they do, right? But you want to make, and a lot of athletes, they go hard at the beginning of the week and they slow down and they kind of temper down towards the go, well, it's game day. It's game day for, no. Reverse that bad boy. Reverse it. Start slow and finish strong on Thursday for your game on Friday. You want to make sure that they just come off their hardest practice on Thursday, right? And they're going to jump right into it, because there's what we call muscle memory. There's also called functional memory, strategic memory, right? Which basically, when you work out, say you work out on a regular basis, right? And then you stop working out for 2 weeks, right? There's no residual there. But when you're on a workout schedule that's going day after day after day after day, your workout gets into a run, right? It's the same thing for practice. Go work your practice. If you want Monday off, that's fine. But go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So heighten your practice, your intensity, so that when you hit your game, when you hit the hardwood on Friday, you're ready. You're like, oh, I can't wait to get out on the floor. Then you want to get out on the floor, right? And so when we've done that with our teams, I had one college team that said, we lose on Fridays, but we win on Saturdays. I said, well, tell me about your practices. Well, if we do well on the weekend, we have Mondays off, and then we have skills and stuff on usually on Thursday, but we go hard on Tuesday and Wednesday. So I said, you're doing skills and just individual skills stuff on Thursday, and it's an optional skate. I'm going, what? No. Okay, we're going to change the routine. Let's see what happens. They say, because we're losing on Fridays, we're winning on Saturdays. I said, yeah, because you're taking too long mentally, spiritually, right, and emotionally to be ready for the game on Friday and the game on Saturday. You're ready for the game on Saturday because you played on Friday. Does that make sense? So we changed the practice routine. So individual skills, let's do that. Optional on Monday. If they had a good game, I said, okay, great. Optional Monday. Tuesday, it's 70-30, right? Wednesday, 80-20. Friday or Thursday, 90-10. You're hitting it hard. And guess what? The very first week we did that, they won on Friday, won on Saturday. They went on to play in the national championship game in Lake Placid and lost, but they never would have done that had they not switched that around. So as you begin to look at this, so what I call the 5 elements of human behavior. Over here on the task side, there's only one. There's only one. It's physical. It's just the physical area. You just have to physically be involved, physically be ready to perform at a high level. On the people side, on the IS side, people side, there's 4. There's mental, there's emotional, there's spiritual, and there's relational. There's 4 elements that you have to contend with. And when I say spiritual, we always say, do you have the spirit of camaraderie? Do you have the spirit of sportsmanship? Do you have the spirit? It's something you can't put your hands on, but it's a feeling.
It's an energy. Yeah.
It's an energy. That's a spiritual thing. So there's those 4 elements. If any of those 4 elements, it's like a wheel, it's like a wheel. If a wheel has one spoke, just one spoke that's loose, what happens to the wheel? The wheel begins to wobble. Your ride becomes affected. Exactly. And you veer off. So all 4 of those spokes on this side, mental, emotional, spiritual, and relational. If you got 2 guys that are at odds, and I don't like that guy, Justin, he just thinks, I don't like that guy, Gordon, he's a loudmouth and he's arrogant, and there's a subconscious disconnect. There will be a conscious disconnect, right? Because it affects performance. When you're not feeling your best, your performance will fall off. When you're feeling your best, chances are very good to tend to have a strong performance output. Does that make sense? So those
Absolutely.
4 elements on that side, mental, emotional, spiritual, and relational, all have to be tended for. It's a lot of work, man. That's a lot of work. But here's the thing. If you create a culture the culture you create in a program becomes hugely important and saves you all kinds of trouble, because there's usually a separation in teams that, at least in my experience, for 25 plus years that I've been working with hundreds of different teams, there's a lot of teams that I start working with, there seems to be this separation between it's us and them. Well, the coaches and the players, there's no in between, right? It's like, well, it's us and those dang coaches. A coach said, well, I've just been hired by this team. Tell me about your approach to coaching. So, well, we're going to implement a great culture. We're going to implement this and this and this. Here's the thing it drives me bananas when guys come and say, well, we're going to implement a culture. I came from Notre Dame, or I came from Brown, or I came from Princeton or Yale or wherever. I came from this club, and we were winning over there because we had a great culture. And they impose their culture on the organization, and they start winning. That's great when they're winning. When the excrement hits the ventilation system, I don't have to translate that for you, do I?
I got it. Yeah.
When the excrement hits the ventilation system, guess what happens to your culture? It goes in the toilet. Well, it's that darn culture. It's what coach told us we should be. That's not what I want to be. So here's what we do. I say, okay, Justin, you're on this team. What kind of team would you like to play for?
Right.
What are the values that you want to see on this team? And so I give them a list. I just did this with a junior C team here in Ottawa. The guy called me up and he says, hey, Gordo, I'm having trouble with my team, but they're all over the place. They're taking bad penalties and this. And I said, well, what's your culture? And he said, well, we really haven't developed that. I said, okay. So I give them a list of about 70, probably about 50 to 70 values. I said, have them go through the values assessment. Right? Have them go through the values assessment, select the values. Who do you want to be as a player, or who are you as a player? Tell me who you are as a player. Choose 5 of those values from anything. Just choose 5 values of who you are as a player right now. Like, who are you as a player? And then on a team, if you want to be on a team, what values would you want them to have? So I have 2 lists. I have the player values and I have the team values, right? And then I get every athlete on the team and the coaches to do it, because there's no hierarchy in culture. Why? Because it's based on behavior. It's not based on skill. It's not based on ability. So I don't care if you're the owner of the team, the president of the team, the general manager of the team, or if you're a rookie, a freshman. It doesn't matter. It's all geared towards attitude and behavior. Yeah? If the coach has a bad attitude, if the coach comes out and says, he's swearing spitballs at everybody and you say, hey, we want respect. Well, that wasn't very respectful. You get to call it the coach. It doesn't matter who you are. You could be a freshman and you could call it the coach. Why? Because it's going against our values. It's going against the values of our culture. So you end up you go through all the list of the values and you select the ones that are most common. Well, Justin picked respect. So did Gordo. So did Steve. So did Frank. So did John. Okay, what else? Discipline. Oh, wow. Justin, Gordo, Frank, Steve, right? What are the other ones? Well, we had compete. See what I mean? And you come up with 4 to 5 values. I'd say usually 4. 4 is good because when you're building a house, you want 4 corners, 4 structures, 4 pillars of your culture. And the key banner over this is accountable to. So accountability is not a value. Accountability is an action. A lot of people make the mistake of creating accountability or being accountable as a value. It's not a value. It's an action, right? So you want to be accountable to respect. And Justin and Gordo, they're going, yeah, we do. You want to be accountable to discipline, and Justin and Gordon go, yeah, you do, right? And you're getting excited now. Why? Because you and I chose that. We're on the team. We want a team that's respectful. We want a team that's committed, that's disciplined. We want a team that's all of these 4 values. And now what you've done is you've given ownership to them. It's their culture. Listen, employees don't have the same attitude towards a company as owners do. Why? They've got no skin in the game. Companies that have what they call profit sharing, and you actually have a stake in the outcome of the company, their attitude towards work becomes different. Why? Because they have skin in the game. They've actually invested in the culture and the dynamic of delivering for their customer, the dynamic of delivering for their team, because it's part of their culture. It's who they want to be and who they want to play for. Does that make sense? So as you come up with your 4 culture pillars, you now have the dynamic of a strong performance culture. And it's, hey, you have permission to hold me accountable, Justin, as the head coach. And as a freshman player, you can come to me, right? And you can say, hey, coach, what you said in the locker room was really disrespectful and I didn't appreciate it. And you can hold what, and here's what we do. We take that image. I'm a graphic artist. So what I do for all my athletes and all my teams is I take their logo, I put it in the middle of an 1117, and I put accountable to, right? Accountable to, and then the 4 pillars around the logo. And then at the bottom, at just another phrase said the 4 C's. I said, don't criticize, condemn, complain, or compare. I call that my magical 4 C's with communication. Don't criticize, condemn, complain, or compare. The toughest one there is compare. Well, how come Justin gets to play? Go suck your thumb in the corner if you want to, like, right? So don't. So that's a pillar. Now here's what we get the players to do. They sign it. It's called a cultural covenant, a cultural promise that you, Justin, and you, Gordo, and you, Steve, and you, Frank, and you, John, you're all going to play under the banner of this culture. And if you don't, you're going to be held accountable to it. Are we okay with that? And they all go, yes, we're all okay with that. Because it's a level playing field now on what? Attitude and behavior. When your attitude and behavior is pointed to the right direction, now you can start rowing in the direction that the team wants to go. For me, that's been a very successful formula over the last 20 to 25 years with every single team. And if you don't operate it in a way that it's supposed to operate, it'll fail. Here's what I mean by that. Are we okay? We doing okay?
Yeah, doing great.
Okay. So here's what I tell people about culture, Justin. Very important. If your culture is seen as something you only find people doing things wrong, your culture will suck. So what you have to do is you have to find out, okay, this week, who's been our champion on respect? Justin. Justin's been super respectful, right? So Justin this week is going to be recognized as our respect champion. Okay, who's our discipline champion this week? It's going to be Steve. Steve was unbelievable. Like he was in a situation where he got fouled 14 times, right? And he never got angry. He never got upset. He's going to be our discipline champion. You have to celebrate people in the values of your culture. Why? Because when the moment comes where you say, hey, Justin, you were disrespectful. Well, that's all you ever do is you tell me when I'm disrespectful. This culture sucks. But if I celebrate you 5 to 10 times more for the culture that we be included in, saying this is very much a part of who we are. It's our identity. We are respectful. We're disciplined. We have work ethic. We have commitment. We compete. Whatever they are, then you can basically have something that is, hey, this is our identity. And when people break the culture, when they break the values, they now have to be held accountable and say, okay, dad calls you up and says, hey, why isn't Gordo playing? And you say, well, Mr. Macfarlane, why don't you ask Gordo? Because Gordo's going to know why he sat. Because he broke a covenant rule. He broke a covenant value. I was disrespectful to coach and I was disrespectful to 2 players. That's why. And because the only currency we have, Justin, is playing time. It's the only currency we have. Am I playing this weekend? No. They gnashing of teeth, right?
Yeah.
The only currency we have. I say, look, if you're working hard, you're going to get a chance. And your commitment to them is say, look, if there's an opportunity to play you, I'm going to play you because I love who you are as a person. I love your character. I love your focus. I love your intensity. I love all the things about what you do as a player. Right now, there are just some guys that are ahead of you that you're going to get your spot. But when there's an opening, you're going to be my first choice. You give young athletes an opportunity to see where they're developing under the guise of your culture. So it's not just skill and ability. Well, your free throws are great. Your rebound, you suck. You know what I mean? Like you have a measure, not just in skill and ability, but in their character as well, which are pillars in life. If you have a bad attitude at work, you're not going to get recognized for future endeavors. So it really lends itself to developing a good citizen. Whew, there you go.
I love it. There's so much wisdom in there. And we actually do a lot of that. And I've learned a lot of this over kind of my time is giving ownership, player autonomy, getting that buy-in. Because I even recognize that, like I'm part of some systems and teams, like because I've made it such an important culture part of BTG that if I'm a part of another team and I don't feel like I'm given like that same autonomy and ownership, I don't feel it, and like it's just, I want to be a part of it. I want to have autonomy, and players now, they want to have autonomy. And that's how successful teams win. And, there's just so much wisdom within that. And as we kind of hit our 2-minute warning with our podcast, what would your kind of final words of advice be for the coaches and parents listening and talking about kind of that communicating to connect? Because you alluded to it, but I'd love for you to expand more on that.
I guess the biggest challenge that I get faced with is that, people love the program. They talk to me and they ask me questions about, what is your program? What does it offer? What are you doing? I saw what you've done with this team. And, I saw what you did with Notre Dame. I saw what you did with this other program or that program. You won 2 national championships. How did you do that? I explain, well, this is our step process on the performance mindset model. This is what we're doing. And they say, well, great. So, yeah, we'd love to have you come in and work with us. I said, but we don't have any money. I have no budget. I said, well, I asked you the question earlier, what percentage of the sport of basketball is mental versus physical? And you told me 60% is mental. And yet you've got zero budget set aside for having someone who's a specialist. Are you a specialist in human behavior? No offense to you, not trying to be disrespectful, but you have to bring, if someone like LeBron James, or that maybe not be a good, for skill, for certainly, but if MJ came to your, or Barkley, or one of those great basketball players came and said, hey, Justin, I'd like to show your guys a little bit about, 3-point shooting from the outside the key. You can say, no, sorry, I got this, Mr. Barkley. I've got this, MJ. You'd take them in an instant, right? Because they're subject matter experts. Well, from a human behavior perspective, in terms of performance, I'm a subject matter expert, right? And so, but they don't have any money put aside. They haven't prioritized the development of performance mindset. When you and I have just talked for the last, well, I've talked mostly, but you and I have just discussed the importance of performance mindset development, growth mindset, fixed mindset, eliminating the fixed mindset. And yet we don't put aside money for it. I had one team tell me, well, we'd love to have you come in. They've been losing. They've been in last place for the last 10 years, Justin. And you know what the guy said to me? The assistant coach wanted me to come in. And he says, I talked to head coach and he said, well, we don't have budget for it. We have to get new uniforms this year. I said, you use the old uniforms. You've been losing for 10 years. Right? You see what I mean? So Our priorities are way off. Our priorities are way off when it comes to, selecting a team that's going to be competitive and that your players and your coaching staff are going to be super proud of what's going on. St. Cloud University women's hockey, Brian Adelsky, used to coach at North Dakota, had an unbelievable success run there, coached some pro hockey in Russia. He got the head job at Minnesota St. Cloud, and he and I had a chat. He says, Gordo, I need you to come in, help me get this team set up. Well, they were in the basement. He got a team that was not very good, right? So we started to work at developing a leadership group that was going to really transfer the message from coaches to stuff. And again, that's another thing you want to think about is creating a leadership group that's going to be connected to coaches, because we as coaches we have limited touch points, right? So we create what's called a leadership council. And so I helped Brian develop a leadership council with the team. And guess what? They're a ranked team this year. It's my 3rd season with them. Because I say it's going to take 2 to 3, maybe even 4 years to instill the culture, instill the belief and understanding. They're recruiting differently. They're bringing in the right mindsets so that we don't have to work too much on that. I can just bring them in and say, hey, here's what we're part of. We show them the culture. Do you want it to change? We make them part of the culture, ownership. And guess what? They're a ranked team this year, right? And they're winning. They have a winning record. And I meet with them on a regular basis, usually once every 3 weeks. And I just tweak them. I give them a little training for about 10 minutes, and then we talk. So to me, my message is prioritize the development of performance mindset. Teach your athletes to communicate, to connect, how they're feeling, mental wellness, right? Emotional, we talk about, what's the state of the emotions of our athletes? It's a big thing. Mental awareness, right? Well, if you're good, some of you have a little bit of training in that. This has been my life for 25 plus years, right? And so why would you not want to bring me in? So I have these starting pack. It's so inexpensive for people to start. I have this $1,500 package where you get profiles for all your players and you get profiles for all the coaches. I do a circle chart. I give the whole team a training on what the messaging is. $1,500. $1,500. My program usually costs $8,000, right? Notre Dame was paying way more than that, right?
Right.
And what did it get them? 2 back-to-back Big Ten championships.
Right.
Canisius baseball, right? 2 championships. I can go. I got 10 championship rings here from organizations that said, "Hey, Gordo, you are a very big part of this." Prioritize. If 50% or 60% or 80% is your focus on mental, well, that's a big part of my game. Well, why aren't you investing in it?
Right.
Why aren't you? It doesn't make sense to me, Justin, why you would tell me with your response to my question that it's 60, 70, 80% of the game and you've got zero investment, you've got no skin in the game in the middle of that development. That makes absolutely no sense to me. And I'm not necessarily a logical guy, but just I'm a results guy. I get results. That's what I do.
Love it.
Does that
I
make
love
sense?
it. Yeah, no, 100%. So where can people like myself go find your content, go find your books, and connect with you if they want to, either bring you in or just, obviously consume all the good stuff, because there's a lot of good stuff that you
Here's
talk
another
about,
book you
and I'm
might be
sure you
interested
could have
in.
went on for another hour or two.
Increase Your Grit and
Love
Mental
it.
Toughness.
Love it.
So those books are available on Amazon. And my website is performancemindsetcoach.com, www.performancemindsetcoach.com. And I'm researching right now to start a YouTube channel called Performance Influencer, how to become an influencer in life. It's going to be probably a live broadcast once a week, maybe more. I don't know. I'm talking to a gentleman here who's going to try and help me set up, but I'm going to start a YouTube channel here probably in the next couple of weeks and go live, hopefully for the new year. But that's where I'm going to be. But www.performancemindsetcoach.com is my website. My book, Communicate to Connect, is available on Amazon. And I would love that you would get a copy or promote the copy. And certainly I hope we can maybe do some work together as well with your JV team or your varsity team. I'd love to be able to help you out there. And if you have anybody else that wants to reach me, by all means, my email address is PMC Performance Mindset. So it's PMCGordo@gmail.com. PMCGordo@gmail.com. Thank you so much for having me on the show, Justin. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate you and dropping all the wisdom. I got 3 pages of notes, and I'm sure I have many more if I go back and re-listen to it. So thank you, Gordon, for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Beyond the Scoreboard podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and share it with a friend, coach, or parent you feel like would get value from this episode. It's our responsibility to impact as many parents and coaches who are the ones that are impacting our athletes. That's how we create a ripple effect. So thank you for being a part of our community, and we look forward to serving you all next week.